In order to create and maintain a safe environment for people who experience challenging behavior due to their mental health issues or other issues, we must recognize and respond to difficult and challenging behavior. In this lesson, we really are going to explore how you as a CYC can contribute to a safe milieu for people with complex mental health issues. So how can you do that? For me, one of the ways to do that is really to recognize and respond to difficult and challenging behavior. And this particular lesson is really about recognizing difficult and challenging behavior in our clients that we support, and responding in a way that will contribute to a de-escalation of that difficult behavior, a recognition of that behavior, and a development of a relational milieu that is based on support and care and respect. So in this particular discussion we're going to explore what is difficult and challenging behavior, how does it impact on you and your environment, and how does it look and feel. It's really important that we recognize how what it is that we're seeing as difficult and challenging behavior in the people with mental health issues that we support, and really understand how it impacts you as an individual when you're supporting that individual, and how it impacts you and the people around you or the physical environment. And then when you add on how you look and feel in terms of the behavior, it certainly has a lot to do with how you respond to difficult and challenging behavior. So how we respond really is the trick or the key to how we impact the individual that we are supporting. And so there are different kinds of factors that impact our responses when supporting individuals in a variety of conditions. One of those is what we call instinctive responses, and these are the things that happen naturally for us because our body, our mind, our human responses to fear and anxiety certainly contribute to the automatic responses that we may have as humans when somebody is having a difficult moment. There are underlying factors that impact difficult and challenging behavior that we certainly must understand, because these underlying factors have a lot to do with how we respond to difficult moments. And some strategies that we're going to explore in this lesson really are the idea of empathy or reflective listening, and looking for clues to help respond in a way that would be supportive and understanding to somebody who's having a challenging moment. I want to talk a little bit about the idea of transitions, especially for children and youth, but for anybody who is experiencing difficult moments, maybe some anxiety, some transitional challenges, communication challenges, or are stuck in feelings or emotions. The transitions, the times in between things can be challenging for these individuals. And then planning for difficult and challenging behavior. So overall, this lesson really is about recognizing and responding to difficult and challenging behavior associated with the symptoms of mental health issues. And I'm going to focus on recognizing the difficult behavior, and then focus on how we can have some strategies, some in-the-moment strategies in terms of how we respond to difficult moments. And this really is a basic introduction to the concept of responding to crisis and crisis intervention, which is certainly a wider curriculum that would be explored at a different time, more in depth. So what is difficult and challenging behavior? And if I were in the classroom with you, I would stop at this moment and I would ask each of you to, or the classroom, to sort of tell me what you think difficult and challenging behavior is. So take a moment now during this particular slide, and I want you to pause it and get a pen or paper, a note, or just any device, and just make a note of maybe a couple of difficult and challenging behaviors that you think are going to be, or you have read about that will be part of the kind of work you'll do with children and youth who have mental health issues. So, for example, if somebody was really anxious, obviously the anxiety behavior would be a difficult situation for you to deal with. So don't use that one, but think about others that might be difficult and challenging behavior. So when you're ready, you can rejoin the lesson. So here's my list of what difficult and challenging behavior might be, and I'm assuming that if you've all done your list, you'll probably have most of these covered. So the first one is fighting. If you're working with children and youth, children who are impulsive, children who have feelings that they are having a poor self-regulation, children who are impulsive, children who might be having attachment issues, you can certainly expect to find that children will, certainly physically fight with each other in care settings, maybe at school, and so that's a behavior that you'd be faced with. Defiance, I won't do that. I refuse to do that. You can't make me. Children who just sit on the ground and just are stubborn and defiant to do what needs to be done to move and progress. And this defiance happens for many reasons, but that is the behavior. Aggression. I mean, we talked about fighting, but other forms of aggression, lashing out, throwing objects, throwing toys, biting, kicking, that in general is another behavior that you would see. Rages and storms. This is the idea of a tantrum. If you have ever seen a young person, a 2 or 3 year old be upset, kick, fight, fuss, out of the blue, having a tantrum for what appears to be small issues or large issues. These tantrums, as people get older, still exist, and we certainly call them rages and storms rather than a tantrum. Being passive. Children can become quiet and sullen and passive and not say anything, and that's challenging as well, especially children and youth who are anxious or depressed or are fearful of saying what they need to say, or are just experiencing, anxiety themselves, which creates a shutdown. That's a behavior you'll face with. And then, of course, anxiety behaviors, feeling worried, and then having some external or covert kind of behaviors around anxiety, which we've discussed earlier in the classroom. Kids will be verbally challenging, swearing, yelling, screaming. Those happen as well. Some kids get physical, right? Not all, but some kids do. Kids with ADHD on the severe end, or maybe not even so severe, moderate. Kids with autism, kids with other developmental or cognitive issues, communication challenges, social skill deficits might get physical. Homesickness I have here. It's interesting that I write that because, there are kids who are living in care and care facilities who, miss their families or go to camps or go to treatment programs or are even at school and have a tight connection to their families who might be feeling sick or missing their families, and then, of course, behavior ensues. Kids make threats, threaten to harm people, objects, threaten to run away, threatening to AWOL, threatening to, not do their work, threatening to, have a tantrum. These are things that these are behavioral side effects of a variety of neurological or social, emotional, or behavioral challenges. Kids destroy property. This is a big problem. Windows, glass, walls, mirrors, objects, things around physical space when kids are upset or having difficult moments, or anybody are certainly vulnerable to destruction and then become weapon themselves. Kids run away, and I tell the story of certainly at schools, if you were in school placement, you would see there certainly wouldn't be a time where some kid who was certainly within the spectrum of some kind of behavioral challenge leaving school property, leaving the property under a difficult moment, and of course that's a challenge, or kids that live in group homes that don't want to be there, children who don't understand their living conditions or treatment might run away. Might run away. Kids may also run away from their own homes, and certainly that's also an issue for children and youth who are experiencing poor mental health. how does difficult and challenging behavior impact you and your environment? And this is a really important aspect to consider because, of course, when you're faced with difficult moments, whether it impacts you both physically or emotionally, it impacts how you respond as a human and as a care practitioner. And your responses are really the key to how you will be able to manage and impact somebody who themselves is having a difficult moment. And so let's explore that concept a little bit further. So, in terms of how difficult behavior impacts you, and remember when we're talking about difficult behavior, we're talking about the fighting, the aggression, the passivity, the rage, the throwing of objects, the escalated behavior, the yelling, the screaming, the high emotional output that an individual who is having a difficult moment might confront you with. And this is not easy to support, but your support will make a big difference in terms of the outcome of the particular moment in time where somebody's mental health symptoms or experiences or thinking is really challenging them and you to work through a difficult moment. So, how does it impact you? Well, when somebody is having a difficult moment, when somebody might be yelling or screaming or is overly anxious, it evokes feelings in you. It makes you feel differently than you're feeling now. It has an impact on you. It may make you feel sad or angry, or you might be resentful, you might be frustrated. And these feelings of frustration, resentment, sadness, anger impact how you will respond to an individual who themselves is having a difficult moment. So what I'm saying here is it's perfectly reasonable for you to have been impacted by somebody who's having a difficult moment. If somebody is yelling and screaming at me, it is hard work to hold my feelings inside and convey the feelings I need to convey to that person to help them get through that moment. And so you might be feeling angry or sad or resentful or frustrated. Or if you're impacted by a behavior on a regular basis, if you are regularly having a client or a kid or a group of kids having difficult moment, they will evoke feelings on you, and those feelings will carry on inside of you unless you do something helpful and productive with those feelings, and in the moment respond in a way that's the most productive to help somebody through a difficult moment. It's a disruption. If you are running a group, or if you're having an activity, or if you are in a classroom and there's one kid that's constantly disrupting the classroom with his difficult behavior, that disruption again impacts on you and the rest of the people around you. There was a question about ADHD, for example, on our last test, and that question really was about how does the behaviors of ADHD impact people around peers and teachers, and it can have a significant impact if there is a regular, constant behavioral concern that is impacting the environment of the classroom and others, or families, or parents' environments as well. It can set a tone. Like I said, if you have one or two kids that are very challenging and challenging to support, that are regularly and constantly drawing your attention and needing you to be there for that individual, it will set the tone. You'll find yourself driving to work one day, working with a couple of kids and saying, I don't know if I want to come in. That kid's going to be there. I'm going to have to face that behavior. And that starts to wear on you. And so you imagine teachers and other parents and, people who are managing regularly with people with the difficult and challenging behavior. Unless you respond in a particular way and work through those moments, it's going to have a big impact on you. So taking care of yourself is what I'm talking about here as well. It's stressful. The job we do as practitioners in the child and youth care field, as CYCs in environments where kids need our support, that work is stressful. I make it clear that a child and youth care practitioner doesn't work with kids that don't require intervention and support and attention and aren't having difficult and challenging moments, because those children and youth are able to function well enough to be able to maneuver through all of their environments without having any challenge impacting their ability to function. We're working with individuals who have impairment in areas, social, emotional, behavioral, and that is a stressful job for us. And so all of these things, all of these impacts of even the dangerous behavior, of difficult behavior, the physical violence that can take place, or somebody having an escalated state can be dangerous. All of these impact on you and how you could potentially respond. Now, of course, you have two two ways you could respond. You could respond to anger with anger, or you could respond to anger with some other strategies, which I'm going to talk about. If you respond to these anger of another client and it's impacting you and creating anger and stress in you in an angry way, it will escalate and cause a behavior to become more problematic. And that's really the essence of this lesson. But if you are deploying different strategies, which I'm going to give you, you will have a safer, successful time of supporting that individual. It's really hard. Working with difficult and challenging behavior can impact you in significant ways, and you can work through it. I've been doing it for 30 plus years, but you need to recognize the feelings that are happening with you and your environment, like the disruptions in the classes we talked about, or if you're working in home environments or kids are at home with their families, you need to recognize that the behavior and the challenges associated with these mental health issues are really going to impact the home environment. Siblings, parents, family vacations, family holidays, groups and activities where this individual is part of, or these individuals who might be experiencing poor skills or poor self-regulation will impact on the environment too. The destruction of person can be a significant impact as well. Property. This danger really is the challenges associated with how when people are experiencing poor mental health and their symptoms are severe or moderate to severe, these are the kinds of impacts it will have on you. So what does difficult and challenging behavior feel like? Again, it is important to recognize how it impacts on you in terms of your environment and your experience, but what you're feeling is where I want to hone in on a little bit, and then we can do some work around when you feel a particular way, how you respond in a way that can be supportive and productive when supporting somebody who is having a difficult moment. It's frustrating. When you're faced with difficult and challenging behavior, when your environment is impacted, when you are seeing children and youth having difficult moments or supporting them, you will feel frustrated at times. Again, having the feeling of frustration is perfectly reasonable and normal when you're working with somebody and you're challenged constantly, but how you respond in that frustration is most important. If you respond to frustration with frustration, you will escalate a situation and it will become difficult. If you respond to frustration with support and calm and care and understanding, which are these skills that you've learned over the semesters that you're scaffolding, you will have a better time of supporting somebody who is having a difficult moment. It can be powerful. It can be very powerful. You feel power in terms of a physical a release of adrenaline that flows through your body, that creates a fight and flight kind of response when you're faced with difficult behavior, and it can be a very a powerful experience in terms of your neurochemicals, but at the same time it is certainly powerful in terms of when you are able to support somebody through that moment, in terms of having a positive moment of supporting somebody through those difficult moments. But there is a rush feeling that can happen, and that's a physiological response to fear and anxiety that happens with adrenaline. And of course, that doesn't necessarily mean it'll be powerful for everybody. It just means that there is a powerful, overwhelming feeling that overcomes individuals who are faced with difficult moments, and that's a physical and or emotional response. And that again also can be very exhausting for you as a caregiver, as a CYC. When you're faced with difficult behavior, it's tiring, and when you're doing it regularly, it becomes more tiring. And so self-care and making sure that you're taking care of your own needs when you're not working is really vital to the vitality of your professionalism and your skill. And so we talk about that as well. Sometimes you can feel helpless and not know what to do and feel like you don't know how to respond to the difficult behavior you're being faced with. You can feel alienated because you tried something, it didn't work, or you have a relationship with a client that you feel is disrupted because of the behavior, or many reasons why you might feel alienated from the situation. And maybe somebody else came in after you were working really hard with somebody and all they had to do was say one word, and you were working for hours and this kid was able to respond to that person instead of you. That is another sort of way you will feel from time to time. And they're perfectly reasonable ways to feel when you're faced with difficult and challenging behavior. It's stressful, and I don't need to talk about what stress is, but I can tell you that the part of stress that matters is that when you're constantly faced with stress and you're not managing it well, then you yourself will convey stress. And when you convey stress to individuals who are having difficult moments, it will escalate their stress level and make difficult behavior become more complex and complicated for you to manage. So managing your own stress is important. And then the second thing that you need to remember is that stress causes illness. That too much stress in one's life without outlets to deal with it actually creates sickness and illness because of our hormones and our stress hormones. And if you have too much of that stress hormone, you can actually be physically unwell. It's frightening when you're faced with difficult and challenging behavior and you feel frightened. It makes you feel scared and worried, and again, that contributes to your responses. You can have anxiety now in the moment with a difficult moment when things are calm, thinking about when they aren't, or thinking about what would happen tomorrow. All that anxiety creates feelings in you, and those are feelings that are very reasonable to have, but it's how you manage those feelings that's important. The, the other thing to recognize is really how the student or coworker or other individual that's having the difficult moment is feeling. And these sort of recognizing the other person's feelings, both in general or even in the moment, is really important. That's at that reflective listening that we're going to talk about, or sort of figuring out how somebody else is feeling in the moment of their difficult and challenging behavior. And the interesting thing about this, how do you think other people are feeling, the other person in the crisis is feeling? So if you're feeling frustrated, powerful, exhausted, and helpless or stressful, stressed, how is the student or the person you're working with feeling? Take a moment to think about that. The answer that I think is most appropriate is they're feeling pretty much the same way. The kids we're working with, the people that are having difficult moments, the youth that are having difficult and challenging behavior associated with mental health issues or other social emotional issues are feeling frustrated. And at times they are feeling powerful when they're out of control and escalated, or manic, as we talked about. That doesn't mean they have the power, that means they're feeling powerful. They're feeling exhausted. They're feeling helpless and alienated and stressed and frightened and anxious, just like we are. In the moments of difficult moments, when we are in those complex, challenging moments, low level, high level, challenging behavior, we can sort of gauge how others are feeling and probe and say, you must be feeling really frustrated right now because you are not able to get your math done, or you are feeling really tired or exhausted because the kind of behavior you're having is making you feel tired. Or you need some time to really work through the fact that you're feeling anxious about what's next. So we can use the probing that you've been taught, or I will teach you more about as we move forward in other courses, to learn how somebody who's having difficult behavior is feeling and then help to respond to that. And sometimes when I walk into a situation with a client and I feel myself a little stressed, that person might be feeling stressed, and around me they might be feeling stressed, and I might look around and say, okay, so it looks like people are feeling really stressed now, and I'm here to help. And that can take the stress level down. It's interesting how they feel the same way. And when I look at this and I see that a kid has had a difficult moment, or a coworker or a client or a staff member has had a difficult moment, it's the same kind of feeling. So what does difficult and challenging behavior look like? Okay, so we're going to do a lot of work on challenging behavior in the semesters ahead. But really, when you look at behavior and difficult behavior, there are two ways an individual can act out, either verbally or physically. And you could think of any behavior you want right now. Any behavior that there is, it doesn't matter as long as that's a behavior that's either overt or covert. It doesn't matter. They can be categorized in two areas. They're verbal behaviors or physical behaviors. So verbally, kids are yelling and screaming. They're swearing. They're arguing. They are Even the self-thinking, the internal verbal or covert thinking, that's all verbal. It's just covert verbal or overt verbal processing. And then physical, of course, is the kicking, the hitting, the punching, the throwing objects. The self-harm is physical. If it's self-harm, verbal. Self-talk, it would be verbal. So you can classify behaviors in two different ways: verbal or physical. And I'm going to teach you skills to be able to support individuals having both verbal and physical behavior. I don't know if this is going to work here, but I'll click it because it makes a noise. It yells. It did. It made that happen too. All right, so what are some in-the-moment strategies that you can use to help individuals having verbal and physical challenges? So for the verbal, for the strategies for individuals that are having verbal, yelling, screaming, talking about their feelings, expressing themselves verbally in ways that might be escalated, I want you to know that the first most important strategy that you can deploy, in the moment strategy that you can deploy with somebody who's having a difficult moment, with somebody who is having a verbal out of the control moment, is to remain calm. If somebody is yelling and screaming and you remain calm, you will have a better chance to de-escalate, to keep the entire milieu calmer. There is no time where I ever walk into a crisis situation or help somebody with a difficult moment where I don't remain calm. And that's a real challenging moment to stay calm, but that is really the skills and strategy that we are going to work on. But just taking a deep breath and coming into a situation calmly will change the response and the way that the individual who's having the difficult moment responds to you. You need to be supportive. So if you're calm and you're supportive, if somebody's yelling and screaming, you say, you're having a difficult moment right now. I hear that you're really upset, and I'm here to listen to what's happening. Those two are calm and supportive, will help you through the verbal moments. Another in-the-moment strategy is the idea of setting limits, and limit setting involves offering a person choices and the consequences as a means of de-escalation. So for example, if somebody were yelling and screaming at me, I would say to them, I'm here to be here to listen to you, and when you're talking to me in an inside voice, I'm really going to sit down and listen to what you have to say. I want to help you, and when you are calm and using your inside voice, I am going to be here to listen to what you say just as much as if you yell. And so you can use an inside voice to tell me what's happening. So this is really telling that person that I will be here to listen to them, I will be here to be supportive to them, but they need to talk to me in a calmer voice so that we can work through the challenge that's happening for that individual. You need to catch feelings. You need to listen to what's happening and what's happening for the individual that's having a difficult moment. And then get training, and you will, in other courses in the future semesters around responding to individuals with difficult and challenging moments. Strategies for the physical challenging behavior are certainly really important as well, because some of you might be working in contexts and environments where you will have individuals who are physically out of control. And so the first strategy, again, for you to have is to remain calm. I can't say this enough. Whether it is a verbal or physical outburst, you remaining calm and keeping control of your own emotions, whether you're feeling stressed or not, breathing through and staying calm will help you de-escalate a crisis. Of course, you can be firm. And you can set some clear expectation, like you need to, put that chair down now, and I want to feel safe, but you need to remain calm in that moment, and you will be safe because you'll be able to think and process and work through that difficult moment. If you're working with people who have physical out of control behavior, there needs to be a plan in place. You need to have a plan around how you are going to respond to somebody with a difficult physical behavior. You need to get help. Don't respond alone. If somebody is physically out of control, you are either going to back off, stay calm, and get help, or leave the space if possible and ask for assistance. You need to make sure that you don't put yourself in harm's way without the support of other colleagues. That's really important as well. And then finally, there's absolutely no question about it. Each and every one of the individuals who are working in complex or not complex care environments with children and youth require training around keeping yourself both physically safe and personal safety techniques, but also to, if you're working in environments where you are actually in a space where you need to intervene physically, that you have the proper skills and training to do so. So never intervene physically unless you have the skills and or the policies and procedures in the agency or the place you work. But ultimately, overall, best strategy is to remain calm, have a plan, get help, and get trained to work with people who are physically out of control. Instinctively, our bodies are actually programmed to keep ourselves safe. And when we're faced with a crisis or challenging behavior, the productive responses, unfortunately, are not as robust as the non-productive responses to challenging behavior. So, for example, when we're faced with difficult and challenging behavior, according to the Crisis Prevention Institute, you have a decrease in reaction time. So the idea is that it will take you less time to react to something that's being thrown at you when you're faced with difficult and challenging behavior. You may also have an increase in speed and strength and the ability to hear things and smell things, and those are very productive responses, but the non-productive far outweigh the productive, like freezing when you're faced with difficult behavior, overreacting to somebody who's having a difficult moment, getting into a power struggle. When you are in a power struggle, you are going to lose with somebody who's having a difficult moment. And what do we mean by a power struggle? That means that you are trying to say to somebody they need to do something a certain way and the way that you want them to do that, or that you're getting pulled into the battle of who are you to make me do this? The moment you put your hand on your shoulder and you have your finger up, that sort of metaphor but physical stance, you are in a power struggle. You're in a battle with a child and youth who wants power and you want power in the situation, and you're in a struggle. And so what I would suggest you do when you're feeling or you are in a power struggle is to let go of the rope and be supportive and be there to listen and not worry about who's going to win. And let me give you an example, one more of that. I have a youth that lives in one of my homes, and one of the things that he really needs after he's had a difficult moment is for a staff member to apologize to him, because he feels that somebody wronged him because they were firm or they had an expectation that he didn't like. And so it's certainly a situation where he's asking for an apology. And of course, a staff member would feel, I don't have an apology to make. I was just telling you what needed to be done next, and you became out of control and belligerent, but now you're asking me to apologize for asking you to do something reasonable, like the next thing for you to do is to take your laundry basket to the laundry room so that your laundry can be washed, and you got upset, and I was firm to say you need to take your laundry to the laundry room, and now you want an apology. My response to that youth would be, rather than the power struggle, would be, I'm sorry to hear that you didn't like that I asked you to bring your laundry to the laundry room, or I'm sorry that me asking you to do that job interrupted you what you were doing in this moment. And I'm sorry that you felt unhappy that I asked you to do that. I never apologized for the actual action, but wanted to acknowledge that this individual certainly had feelings, and acknowledge that person could have an apology in some way. We get angry. We may get inappropriate responses, say the wrong thing. We get defensive and try to become defensive about what we're trying to say. And sometimes we use an inappropriate tone. And these are the non-productive responses that actually escalate a crisis. There are underlying factors that impact behavior as well, and these are over which we have little or no control. You see, this man is really angry right now. He's angry at the fact that his computer is not working. He has a deadline to get a paper in by midnight, and his internet is down. He has no control over that, but man, is he angry and pissed off about it. And so these are the things that impact the kids and the youth and the people that we work with. This is displaced anger. Anger that something that happened at the playground now comes into the classroom and impacts the classroom. Another kid pushed a kid on the bus, and when he comes home, he's angry at his family because he was pushed and his feelings were hurt, but he can't tell that family that. There are psychological and physiological responses or causes of behavior that over which we have no control. And so the idea of all of this is that when kids are not sleeping well, or hungry, or over thirsty, or hot, or have medication side effects, or they have a neurological condition in itself, like an ADHD, these are factors that impact behavior over which you have no control. So don't take the stuff personally. Behavior happens. moments, and that's really important. But we also can have an impact on being proactive to help people by being proactive around making sure that our kids are not thirsty all the time, that they're not sleep deprived, that they're getting the food they need, that we're monitoring medication side effects, and that we understand that children with neurological development problems and challenges are going to have difficult behavior, and we can accept that and support people through those moments and teach and learn those with those help those kids learn by teaching and learning. One of the skills that you know of very well is this idea of reflective listening and looking, and the idea that people really talk in code. Most people are upset they don't really say what they mean, and so you have to really probe, ask questions, both open-ended and closed-ended questions, but mostly open-ended, to learn more about what's happening. So you want to look and listen to the things that lead to challenging behavior. As kids are escalating, ask somebody, you look frustrated about that math work. Can I help you get that question so that you understand it so that you can move forward? As opposed to just saying you can't be angry when you're in the classroom. You need to be supportive. You need to say to somebody, hey, it's really hard for you to get those baskets in that basketball net. I'm going to help you get a good basket, and I'm going to show you, well, let's work together and do it, because I'm not so good at shooting baskets either. Be understanding. It's hard for individuals with difficult neurology or emotional, social, or psychological challenges to regulate their own behavior. So be understanding of those challenges and help those individuals through those moments. And use compassion and care and reflection and reflection to clarify messages. So is that math work hard for you, Jane? Or are you really just having a hard time concentrating in the noisy classroom? No, I really need a quiet space to go, Jane would say. And we would say, okay, let's go to a quiet space so you can get your math work done. So it really wasn't that math work was hard, but it was really that the math work was hard to do in the environment. So you're clarifying the messages to help somebody through the difficult moment. Look at body language. Body language of yourself and the individual you're working with will tell you a lot about what's happening in terms of your reflection. So if somebody is looking angry and not saying anything, you can say to that person, I really see that you're really angry right now, and I want to hear about what's making you angry. Tell me what's going on for you so that I can be here to help you. You see how we can look at body language and reflection to learn more about what's happening for somebody. And that will de-escalate somebody who's having a difficult moment. Transitions is the time where many or most behaviors occur, and this is because most social expectations are unclear or unknown at this time. And so I've talked to you about the idea of setting clear expectations and setting limits in terms of telling somebody what they need to do and tell them the positive and negative consequences of that. So when we move on to the next classroom, you need to keep your hands at your side and walk in the hallways using an inside voice. This will tell somebody what to do, and then they know what they need to do, and so they have the idea and information that they need to be successful. You need to give warnings when there's time changes. People and children with a variety of self-regulation challenges have a challenging time changing activities. So if somebody is playing video games but needs to do their homework, it's probably a good idea to work out sort of a warning. You've got 10 minutes to finish that game, and then we need to get on to the homework, or you've got 5 minutes, or when that game level is done, and how much time is that, Jim? Jim says that's 10 minutes. We got to move on to the next activity. So give warning. And then, of course, kids and children and youth with poor self-regulation and poor executive function and mental health issues and anxiety have a hard time with their time management. So you can model time management skills, and that's really something that you can help in terms of that time filling in between that people can use to teach and motivate change when youth and children are having a difficult time filling those moments because they don't know what to do. And finally, you need to have a plan. If you have individuals that you're supporting with difficult and challenging behavior, you want to communicate with your colleagues that you work with to make sure that you have the same plan to support that individual, that the team is communicating together, that you're talking to the person themselves who has difficult moments and including them as part of a planning process. If somebody is saying to you, a child or youth is saying to you, I have a hard time controlling my temper and I don't like it, but I need to have a space where I can go to blow off steam when I'm feeling upset, and these are the things that I will do when I'm unhappy or I'm feeling stressed and frustrated, then that person can help work on a plan, and then everybody is part of that plan and modifying that plan as you move forward with helping somebody with difficult moments. And of course, everything that you do and work with in terms of helping somebody through difficult moments should teach and motivate, not punish, right? So if somebody is having a difficult moment, then your strategies and your support should be those that teach somebody new skills or motivate them to do the right thing. And so we don't want to take things away from children and youth. We want to give them skills and strategies. And so these are some of the strategies to help work with difficult and challenging behavior to create and maintain a safe space for individuals with mental health issues. A very basic introduction, a couple of in-the-moment skills and strategies that you can use to help in terms of helping individuals. And you need to get more training. And of course, this is the introduction to other training that will exist for you as CYCs, but also training out in the professional field around managing crisis, intervening with crisis, mental health, suicide intervention training, mental health first aid. These are all add-on training skills in addition to crisis intervention training and certification to help manage difficult and challenging behavior. And be prepared, finally. Be prepared for difficult and challenging behavior by using good skills, by taking care of yourself in terms of your self-care, by communicating, and by getting the well-rounded development of understanding of mental health issues, and the basic ways to intervene so that you can meet the challenge with what we call love and skills. And so, or support and care and compassion and kindness. Be prepared because you are entering a field where difficult and challenging youth, because of a variety of mental, emotional, physical, and or psychosocial challenges, are going to have difficult and challenging behavior. And our idea of supporting those individuals is through a planned, mindful, caring team approach.